and Begin podcast. I'm your host, Asia. And today we have Ahmard Vital. Did I say that right?
Vital.
Vital.
Both.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry about that. He is a mental performance coach. He's worked with athletes at the Division 1 level and National Football League. He's also the founder of That Guy Media Group. He's also a motivational speaker, a published author, and he also works as a humanitarian and teen ministry leader. You are a busy guy. How are you today?
I'm well. Thank you for having me on.
No problem. Thank you for cutting out time in your schedule and joining us. So, whereabouts are you from?
I live in Houston, Texas, North Houston, an area called Spring, and that's where I reside currently.
Okay. Were you born there?
No, I was actually born in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Really?
Yes,
And how
yes.
long you been in Texas?
I've been in Texas 40 plus years. I think my parents said we moved to Texas by the time I was 2. So
Really?
I basically was just born, obviously created and born in Louisiana, and we got to Texas as soon as we could.
Okay. Do you go back to visit often?
No, not really. We have both sides of my family have family out there, but most of us are either in Houston, DC, and I think we have another facet out of South Carolina as well.
Okay. So we'll discuss, a bunch of different areas of your life today. So tell me this. What was it like growing up for you? Were you in a two-parent household or how was that?
I was in a two-parent household, born to two loving parents. My mother is an elementary school teacher. My father is a petroleum engineer. And that union didn't work out in the long run. I think they got divorced somewhere between 11 and 12 years old. Soon after, my mom got remarried to a world-renowned artist. So I always gladfully say I have two fathers, and so that was the thing. And the interesting thing is, you're talking about dads from two different worlds, but both of them were highly educated, and both of them both had a knack for not accepting any excuses. There wasn't an excuse in the world I could use to justify my failure, to justify not getting work done. I mean, it was strict and rough times for me, which ended up being a great motivating factor for what I'm able to do even today.
Okay. Do you have siblings?
I do. I have two younger brothers and an older sister.
Okay. And if you don't mind me asking, so when your parents got divorced growing up, would you say that had an effect on you or not really?
It did. It absolutely did. The dynamic between two fathers, wondering why things didn't work out between my father and my mother. That was always a question. And the interesting thing is that many youngsters who are in this spot, um, you only get one side of the story, and sometimes they don't get the other side. And whether it's positive, negative, or neutral, it's usually tilted one way or another. That's just being honest. Like, for the most part, the custodial parent is not always just like, it was the greatest. She was the greatest I ever had. It's like that typically doesn't usually happen. It usually tilts one way or the other. Um, my mother was pretty even, but I mean, I will say that I was able to reunite with my father later on, and fill in those blanks in my life, and it was good. It was good. So I'm blessed to have a number of people who have poured into me, but it absolutely had an effect on me.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Now, let me ask you something else. When you reunited with your father and you guys conversed about things of the past, was that like an open conversation, and what did that do for you?
It was very open. The first one was at my graduation from college. He flew in from Egypt and came down to come see me graduate. And we sat down over the bar, and in 4 hours, we patched up about 10 years worth of misinformation. I know it's a popular word today. Just fill in the blanks of some things that I had not known, and it was good on the bridge to recovery. Very open. He didn't hold anything back because, again, my father is a petroleum engineer, and he literally embodies that very direct, um, use 3 words when 3 words are needed. He won't use five, and just really got to the point, as far as sharing, what happened during those different times in my life. Because we're talking about basically my preteen years through early college, and it was able to bring some clarity to a lot of the things that I'd only gotten one side of the story of.
Which is always helpful because oftentimes, we aren't able to like move forward and grow unless we have that closure and those questions answered. Um, so with the preteens and like your teenage years, how was that?
It was good. I had a new father step into my life. Obviously, Mr. Vital, very Vietnam veteran artist, very strict, extremely high engagement with his family. I mean, he had taken care of many of his siblings through time, and even his nieces and nephews, helped them through high school, college, and things of that nature. It was good from the standpoint that, he taught me order. He taught me structure. He taught me the baseline things to what it takes to be a young man, and obviously ultimately a man in life. Um, Stood for a lot. He was one of those guys who maybe, I don't want to say did too much as a fault, like where it's almost like you're so nice to where people take advantage of you. And I did get to see that. Um, and that was a good lesson to know you be a servant, but also not to, let people get the best of you because they take advantage of the fact of how good your heart is. So I was able to, kind of sift through that. But he made an extremely impactful in my life from the standpoint of giving me what I need, the basics of what I need to be able to grow and be, the man I am today.
Okay. So let me ask you something else. So what do you think is the most valuable lesson that he taught you? Would you say it's that, or would you say it's something else?
I'd say that my father was very, I don't want to say basic, but his sort of rules
Hmm.
were, you know, work hard, treat people right, save money, and buy some land. That was the basics of everything. And it was like, there's a lot more nuances to that, but if you do those, I feel like if you do those four things, you're doing, that's a good start in life. I think we try to complicate things. It's like, well, what about stocks and what about investments and whatever?
Hmm.
Yeah, but I think what he shared with me is the basics for life. You do those four things, you're not going to be broke.
Hmm.
You're going to be blessed.
Yep.
And of course, my father was also, big in the church. He was a gospel singer as well. So that grounding always was something where it was at the foundation. And a lot of times I think we try to complicate life, in so many different ways, and the dynamics between my two fathers, was something that I was able to embody and grow into on my own. It was just like, okay, I see where he's coming from that standpoint. I see where he's coming from that standpoint. I'm learning this, but the baseline of what my father taught me, and definitely Mr. Vital was so beneficial because, I mean, work hard, treat people right, save money, and buy land.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people who wish they heard something like that and wish it could be just put in such simple terms. And so, I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for that because I look back at that as like the starting point when life starts getting a little, little turmoil in life. You say, all right, what's the foundations?
Hmm.
Okay, work hard, and then you go back to those
Yep.
baselines. And obviously, that's what Vital had given me, and you know, my birth father gave me different things as well. But all of it comes back to the fact that it completed me as the man I am today.
I think that's amazing. I like the four basic points of structure. I think is like very clear, clean cut, straight to the point, and it's not really hard. As we grow up and life happens, we kind of steer away from that. But as you get older, you kind of like, okay, let's take it back to the basics. So I really like those, and I think it's amazing how you had not just one but two fathers to come together collectively and complete the job, and not just like simply, but like over the top and install those type of things in you because not a whole lot of people have that. So that's great. Um, so growing up, would you say you were? How would you say the relationship with your mother was? Was that okay?
It was good. It was good. My mother still lives 30 minutes from me now. She's in her 70s, retired teacher after 42 years. And
Wow.
I always share that, like, this is the importance of having the dynamic of um, father and mother, and a position we are supposed to honor, um, regardless of the things that happen. That's the root of things. We are supposed to honor that position. We don't have to honor the actions of the position, but we are supposed to honor the position. My connection with my mother is, my mother obviously school teacher, very artsy, bubbly, just your typical,
Oh.
boomer, baby boomer type of mentality. Just loves it. And you have to remember, as far as from a birthing standpoint, my mother had nothing but males.
Mhm.
So it's three men and my mother. Now I have an older
Wow.
sister who came from the remarriage. But the fact is, she birthed nothing but men, and so I think she leans in on that. I think
Mhm.
she absolutely embraces it. I mean, yeah, she tries to bring her nuances of, the dolls and little girly things. Like my mom still gives us cards with confetti and
Oh.
stickers and stuff like that, because she's a teacher and she loves it, and we
Yeah.
and we lean in on that. But
Mhm.
I think the thing that my mother gave me, and I actually included this in some of my works and even in some of my keynotes, is my mother taught me the idea of respect for those who typically don't receive it.
Mhm.
Um, I tell a story about a lot of times about when I used to come home from college and even through grade school. I used to always wonder why the cafeteria workers and the janitors used to be so enamored with my mother. Like, they used to, like, I'm not talking about like her, I'm like, they loved her.
Mhm.
And as I got older, you come home from school. Anybody who has a mom for a school teacher, when you come home from school, the stop to come by her school is like a must. You must come
Yeah.
by where she works because she needs to take you on a tour. And
Oh.
moms absolutely love that when their kids come home from college, because it's like they knew you growing up. Here you are, grown man coming home. And it's like, hey, I'm home for 2 days. And so she takes you through the school. And obviously, she would introduce me to her teacher friends. But along the way, obviously, you're passing by what? The custodians, the janitors. And I used to
Mhm.
always wonder why these women and these men were just like, oh my goodness, your mom's so awesome. And this man, I'm just
Oh.
like, wow. And so after like the third trip, I'm like, mom, like, really, what's, I understand, like, they like you. I was like, but these people, like, will give you the
Love
keys
you.
to the house to stay overnight. What is going on here? And she said, well, Maud, in schools, a lot of times people don't treat the janitors and cafeteria workers with respect. They maybe don't clean their classroom up. Just say, oh, somebody else will take care of this. Don't really show them respect in the lunch line and things of that nature. She's like, I always wanted to make sure that they felt as important. So for every Christmas, my mom would send out Christmas cards to her colleagues. She would include the janitors and the cafeteria workers.
Oh.
She would send them thank you cards. About 2, 3, 4 times a year, she would, the janitors and people are working after hours. She'd bring them, a sandwich tray. She'd buy them breakfast sometimes. And these things will be left in the break room, in the same break room where some of the teachers are like looking at them like, oh, that's just them. My mom always leaned in on them. In every school she went to, like, the cafeteria workers and the janitors, like, loved her so much. And so, I always use this, mama told me, but mama showed me.
Mm.
She showed me, like, how to take care of those who clean up, those who manage, those who cut your grass, like the people who have these jobs, they're really the jobs that help, like, America move, right?
Mhm.
The people who work under the streets, the people who get the carts at the grocery store, the people who sack, right? The people who are working behind the scenes, the people who are cleaning up the hotel rooms when they're bringing by the cart. Like, don't look down on them, don't trash them. In fact, love them, respect them, speak to them, ask them how they're doing. Why? Because they're not only are they human, but they have families too. It's just
Mhm.
their profession is this. And look at the idea of what happens. You take that profession away from any of these industries, we're done, right? You try running an office building without the janitorial and cleaning services. No business
Mhm.
is happening there, right? On the airplanes, at the airport, at these different companies, right? In these office suites. Like, she taught me how to always show respect and love those people as if they are equals, because in a big broader sense of things they are, and they need to be
Mhm.
viewed that way. And so I always say that that was the mama showed me, that was one of the things.
That's amazing. And that, you know what, honestly, that was something that my mom taught us too. Like, she used to say, when you walk in these buildings, it doesn't matter if it's the gender or the CEO of the building, you still treat people with the same respect. And honestly, those that are all in all those positions that you were just speaking of, like, they're serving us, they're serving us. And not a whole lot of people want to take on that type of role. They're the ones that are behind the scenes making things happen and making sure it's running smoothly, so we got to definitely be grateful for those people in those positions. So I appreciate your mom for that.
Yeah, she's
So,
uh she's a lover. She loves.
yes, she sounds amazing. um so let me ask you this. I know you said that your father he was in the church, right? So
Yeah,
you grew up in church?
I did, and my church life is interesting. I was baptized in a Baptist church. When my mom got remarried, I accepted Catholicism, so I was in the Catholic church basically preteens through college. I went to college and think non-denominational Baptist church again, and then I had that period that many of us go through where I was probably just a heathen, just Bibles on the nightstand, but a little dusty, and it's just sitting there. And I mean, I,
Yeah.
I, I, I lean into the idea that, like, there was a period of time I was always a believer. The Bible was always near to me, but it
Hmm.
wasn't it wasn't in my heart at the level that it needed to be. It's like I
Hmm.
never shied away from prayer and all those different things like that, but I wasn't intentional. I wasn't,
Hmm.
discipling. I wasn't evangelizing. I mean, I was motivating here and there, but I wasn't leaning in on the Christian values that my parents had brought me up in. So, obviously, that leads to, like the word says, to destruction. And I've had
Hmm.
many of those, and I am grateful for all of them. But all sides of my people is all Christian based, and gave me the foundation for life. Now, whether I took them or not, that's a whole nother conversation. Um, but it's Romans 8:28. All things lead for the good. In the end, all those experiences are helping me be the mentor, be the advisor, be the coach, be the ministry leader I am today. So I can look across at someone young and be like, I've tried a lot of things, and I know that you will try many things as well. But let me help you not try as many things as I did. Maybe you can save 5, 7, 12, 20 years of your life not going down these wayward paths. I probably stayed a prodigal for too doggone long, but it is part of the process, and it's made me a better man and a better leader. And I don't live with any regrets because of that. Even, there's a trade off and there's pain that comes with it. But when I know that I have the opportunity to do the work I'm called to do and lean into that and say, hey, here's the experience, here's where we can grow, here's where I can pour into future generations. That to me is worth all the pain that I've already been through and all the mishaps and all the mistakes I've gone through. So there's a greater calling that couldn't have happened without all of the nonsense I went through that I caused on myself.
Thank you for sharing that. um Let me ask you this. So, what would you say was a turning point from, I mean, because we all, like you said, we all have like strayed away from God, and me for sure, like, but I'm so grateful for all of that because I look at it like every single situation or every single choice that I've made is like an ingredient to go into who God is making me to be. What would you say was the turning point, or what made you turn back towards God?
Well, I'll say there's many turning points, multiples. Obviously, the first divorce of my parents was a major turning point. Um, I would say that my father's death the night after my 33rd birthday, that was a major turning point. So all of these lead up to where we are. My divorce led to another turning point. Um, and then the most recent one would be COVID was my probably my final turning point. Where I am to now today is probably the expedited came from that, and it really came from the fact that I was at a church and the church had put me in a position to, I don't want to say question my values, but wanted me to lean into something that is antithetical to my value system. And I remember sitting there, and I remember I was dating a woman at the time, and I had worked with the teen ministry group for, oh man, we built that thing over 3, 5 years. And I remember she came to an event with me and she heard some of the talks and them telling me that I needed to be more understanding of certain things. And we got in the car and she's like, you got to leave there, right? And I was like, no, my teens are there. I built it. We built this. We built this city. What do we? She's like,
Mm.
you're, I know you as a man of value, and you are
Mm.
not going to compromise your values. And if it comes down to that, you're going to end up leaving. And she was right. 4 months later, I ended up leaving, and I ended up going from that to a hardcore, we're sticking to the word Bible based church of where I've been now for 2.5 years. And I can tell you that there was a rededication to Christ from that moment when I walked into this church in the Woodlands, Texas, to where I just got submerged. Family, faith, freedom, all of these things were just so present, and like an unapologetic pastor who was just like, yeah, come after me if you want to. We're
Mhm.
sticking to this word. You want to do something about it, show up here and
Mhm.
get this word. And I will say I've grown more in the last 2 years than I have in the last decade.
That's
Like, and it's
amazing.
and it's and it's beautiful, but it's like a fire hose. I did my first mission trip. Like, I
Mhm.
mean, all of these different things. And we have a serve day coming up this weekend. Um, we have 25 different service projects going on at the same time across the city of Houston, and
Wow.
just gonna blanket it, right? We're talking about like 5, 6, 700 people, groups of 20, 50, these different things. We're painting, we're doing all these things. And so what my fathers taught me, I got to see it in real time. Now, interesting
Mhm.
enough, it took me till I was in my 40s to find this place where the water was pure. The water was what I needed. It was my tree found the body of water it needed to be planted next to be able to
Mm.
grow into where I am now. And man, I'm so grateful for that. But it is a breaking point, right? Because it's
Mhm.
like like when you get something that's very rich, like your body has to adjust to it. Well,
Absolutely.
take that from a mental standpoint. Like I'm around, you know, so many strong, stoic, righteous, pragmatic men who can pour into
Mhm.
me on a weekly basis, like who will not allow me to falter, who will not allow me to fail. They will pick me up and have hands on me immediately as soon as I walk in there. Well, when you're coming from a hey, kind of do what you want, pray when you want, YOLO, just kind of just,
Wow.
yeah, and just kind of buying into kind of like what I would call a lukewarm spirituality. And then you
Mhm.
go into a place where it's just raw meat with no sides. It's just straight. Here's this
Mm.
Old Testament. Here's this Isaiah. Get this in your life, right?
Yep.
Here's the walk of Jesus. Here's the words of Jesus. That right there, it broke me in the most
Mhm.
beautiful way possible. You go on a
Mhm.
mission trip and you see all of these things. And so now I'm to that place like where I'm just like, whoa, okay, this is what this is supposed to be. So I'm grateful for the path that was shown to me. But where I am now is like I knew that all of that led up. It's like a 4-part, 5-part movie. You didn't
Mhm.
get everything in the first one, but that
Mhm.
part 4 and 5, you're just like, whoa,
Yep.
that's what it meant in part 2. to be
Yep.
part of this. And so now, like, I'm leaning in, and I have, like, there's no more dust on the Bible no more, right?
Mhm.
It's in fact, I just got a new one about 6 months ago, and I jokingly talked with one of my brothers at the church. I was like, I gotta hurry up and continue reading it. I gotta get some wear on it so you won't be calling me out no more. But I
Yeah.
bought a new translation because the church I'm at now uses this translation, and so now it's time to lean in on that. But
Mhm.
it's 8 months old, so I need it needs to get a little bit more beat up because my man has got like 8 years on me. So I
Ah.
got to get a little bit more wear and tear on the Bible. We're getting there, and
Yeah.
they beautifully give me a hard time. But it's been this has been one of the most greatest and most challenging times spiritually in my life, and I lean in
Mhm.
on it, even though it's not always um a feel good from the
Mhm.
standpoint of, like, the old must die and a new must emerge. Well,
Mhm.
what happens in death? It's not easy. It's painful, and it's
Yeah.
beautiful, but it's fulfilling.
Mhm. Oh, thank you for sharing that. So it was something I want to ask you. Now I'm going to take it back a little bit. As far as the death of your father with your birthday. Now, how did that come about, and what was that experience like, and how did you manage to heal from all that?
There's a lot there. I was part of the same church I ended up leaving, and so at that time, I was really into the secret manifestation, just really the thoughts of things. And I'm not, 100% discrediting all of that, because obviously some of it is some mental exercises that can work. But if it's not based in the word, then we're going down the wrong path. And
Mhm.
at that time, I needed that. Even though now I look back and say, wow, how I was looking at that wrongly. But it brought me out of the hole I was in to bring me forward. So I don't look down on that time at all. But that night after my 33rd birthday, I go back to my phone, and my voicemail's blowing up, and my mother screaming saying your father's dying. And I was like, oh, okay, mom says dad is dying. Let's get in the car. I was engaged at the time. I was like, let's get in the car. Let's go see what's going on. And so what I was doing is, I'm like, all right, I prayed to God, and I was like, all right, God, the only thing I ask for you to do is make sure my father walks out of this hospital, nothing else. And even though it was a prayer, there was what I like to call a smugness, almost a spiritual arrogance that came from it, because I'm on the all you have to do is pray it and it's done. Like, there's no
Mm.
way it's not going to be done. That's kind of
Yeah.
where I was. And so I'm like, all right, we're good. So I walk into the hospital, and like the hallways are just lined with family members, and it's not looking good. Like, it's dismal. And so I'm in there, I'm like, all right, who do I need to talk to? Where's the nurse? Where's the doctor? Give me who I need to do. And I need to go see my dad. My dad's gonna walk out of here. And my mom is like deer in headlights. She's like, I don't know what to do. And I was like, all right, mom, I'm gonna take care of this. You know. So then we look around, and then I remember talking to the doctor, and they were like, there's about a 4% chance that your dad will walk out of here, and he'll walk out of here alive.
Wow.
And I'm just like, but I was so into myself that I was like, 4%. All I need is more than one.
Mm.
That's where I was. I was very
Yeah.
into that. And I remember getting my family together. I got my siblings together. I was like, all right, our dad's walking out of here. We're not leaving until we all agree on this. It's like, all right, bet. We're moving. We're moving. And as the nights went on, it was just like, I remember walking over to my father laying on that gurney. And it was the first time I think reality had hit me. That was just like, I can't feel my father's presence looking at, I can't feel him looking back at me. And that's when it like hit me. So, you go from this high, and now it's just crashing down. And so then the moment came where they told my mother that, like, the only way he's still alive is on these machines. And my mom came to me, and she was just like, what do I do? And I looked over at my father, and I was just like, I saw him laying there, and I said, my father wouldn't want to go out like this. He's not a I'm going to stay around by machine type of man. He's a fighter. And I was like, all right, God, you got it. Turn the machine off, and whatever your will is, have your way. And my dad fought for 4 more hours. and then that was it. But the turning point happened from my argument with God when I walked outside after consoling my family, and I was just like, "Did you not hear me? Like, where
Mm.
are you? You said you'd never leave. What are we?
Wow.
What? Like, I'm, it's sweat, it's tears, and they're all mixed together.
Yeah.
I'm just a mess outside." And I remember hearing after, God let me get it out, because God will let you, pour out all
Mm-hmm.
of your nonsense and say, "All right, when you're ready to listen, I'm here. I never
Yep.
left."
Yep.
And so he, you know, the still small voice, the sweet angelic voice said, "I know you've asked some things of me, son, and I've granted what you've asked for. And he's going to walk out of here as you.
Mm.
He's given you everything you need, the value, the work ethic, the strength, the wisdom. Now go be the man whom your heavenly
Mm.
father and the father I chose for you called for you to be." And I always say that was like a mental freight train, anvil, whatever's the hardest surface that'll kill you with one swoop. That was what that hit me with. And I remember going into that time because I was supposed to share my first book, Awaken the Baller Within, with my father. And I never got to do that. He died
Mm.
the week the book was printed. And so I look at that as a major turning point, and it just helped me see life. It helped me see prayer. It helped me see believing on a whole nother level. Because I'm just like, all right, I can sit here and say all of these things. If it's not in the will of God, it's not going down. He
Mm-hmm.
has the
Yep.
ultimate things. We can go to Him and profess what it is we would like to see, but we are so limited. We are
Yep.
limited in thought. We are limited in action. We're limited in everything, which is why His grace is sufficient. He
Mm-hmm.
didn't. He won't take the death, the pain, the adversity, the anxiety, the depression. He won't take it away from you. But
Mm-hmm.
He lets you know that you can't do this without me.
Yep.
See Job. You know what I'm saying? See Jonah,
Ooh.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
see all these, see Moses, right? Like,
My
hey, you don't
God.
need, like, you're setting up the game for the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hold on. So all of these
Yep.
things are part of something greater. And that turning point helped me see life as a whole in
Mm-hmm.
a different way. Um, I just say, like, God, you know what? I got nothing for this.
Yeah.
I am tapped out. But the intellect I
Mm.
have of this world is not enough. You are going to have to show me something because I'm tapped out. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'll say that straight up. After that night, showed me all I needed to know.
You know what? And you just witnessed to me in that, because just last night I was riding after I got off work and was crying out to God, because I'm like, I lost my mother like 3.5 years ago. And
Bless you, bless you.
when she passed, this was like 2 weeks after I came home from being incarcerated. And it's just like the earlier years of my life were fairly rough, and in and out of drugs, alcohol, all that good stuff. And it's just like, I was talking to God last night. I'm like, Lord, it's hurting all over again, because it's like, now that I'm out of that lifestyle and I have an active relationship with you, and I'm living, I know my mom prayed some prayers for me. And like, it just hurts because she's not here to see this stuff. And it's crazy because what you just said, about the things that your father taught you, man, it's like, my mom taught me so much. On, like, she was giving me a first aid kit all throughout life on how to survive after she left. And it was unexpected, and it's like God just answered what I was asking him last night right there with what you said. And it's just crazy. It's just, sometimes gotta put us in these situations too, like you said, start, we didn't even know, like, you didn't even know your ministry was starting there. Our ministry starts in the midst of our pain, you know and just different things like that. um and it is amazing how, like, the creator of the universe, God, is so powerful, but he does sit back and listen, and he lets us get out our frustrations. It's not a one-sided relationship. He allows you to bring that to his feet, and he respects our feelings. Like, he knows that we're human, and he knows that, we get scared, we get angry, we get frustrated, we get upset. And it's not that he's not asking us to feel those things. He's welcoming all that with open arms. And he is always there. It might not feel like it sometimes, you know. Sometimes you're like, God, where are you at? You said you would never leave, but where are you at in this? You know, he's like, I'm still here, you know. So I'm very grateful for that.
Absolutely, and again, whether it's the the thorn, my grace is sufficient, or it's
Mhm.
the prodigal who just lets you, because a lot of times like people who are non-believers, they love to try to dig at those things. It's like there's a God, why does He let bad things happen? It's just like, yeah, you didn't read the next part, right? where
Mhm.
where like He'll never put you in a situation that He can't get you out of, but
Yeah.
the deal is submission, to know that you
Mhm.
you are not you are not enough, right?
Mhm.
I left you. I came here. I died. I defeated death, and I ascended away, and I left you with the Holy Spirit, right?
Mhm.
I left you with this. This is available to you all the time.
Mhm.
And if you don't use it, well, then there's the consequences. Okay, there's consequences for everything, right? Like I
Mhm.
always tell people, like they're like, it's so hard, not being able to earn enough to do this. I was like, there's a trade, there's a cost to success and a cost to
Mhm.
failure, right? Both of them require a sacrifice, and both of them are going to be painful in the pursuit of them. So when you
Mhm.
talk about walking this life, walking a life with Christ, it's like, if your prayer life is not where it needs to be, if your service life is not where it needs to be, because see, when you're, like you said, when you're dealing with different types of people and they're wondering, like, how are you able to get through this? And it's just like, how are you honoring your father?
Mhm.
What are you doing? Are you a servant to the greater good of what He's called for you to be? Have you even asked Him what you're called to be? Right? Have you had that conversation? When was the last time you prayed? When was the last time you worshiped? When was the last time you gathered with like-minded people to go make things happen for the good of others? And when
Mhm.
somebody's just like, "Oh, I hadn't really thought about that," there's our problem. There's our
Mhm.
problem. And it's just like you said, and you losing your mother right after you just came out of another tragic situation. It's like, my goodness, there's a testimony beyond measure. But at the same time, it's like God put all of these markers in our lives. And at the time, we don't know it. Like, we have to go back and like look at the testimony and be like, I didn't even know that was a testimony, but it is, because
Absolutely.
you're letting the healing begin, and the healing is ongoing. Like you just said, it feels like it's reemerging in this moment. And what it possibly could be is like, okay, you leaned on me and I got you here, but now I'm trying to call you here. So now that beautiful, beautiful woman, but it's time. I'm taking you out of this house and putting you somewhere else, which means
Mm.
that version needs to die. And
Mm.
you need to move on to something greater, because I'm calling you to something greater. And no, it's not going to be easy. There's no yellow brick road to this. No. This is this is a struggle, man. You read through all the disciples, like these
Mhm.
guys, like, I mean, it took Jesus leaving for them to be like, ah, got it.
Yeah.
So, like they became, some of them were really, in really doing it at a high level then, but many of them became like the the mighty warriors they became
Yeah.
after
Mhm.
Christ, had already defeated death and left again. But He said, I'll always be there with you. And
Mhm.
as we're going through life right now, there's just there's a burning desire to be more. But
Mhm.
we have to know that it comes with a cost. And it's just like, you know, I always say, sometimes be careful what you pray for.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
God, I really want to, man, I really want to set up, you know, a program where I can help 50,000 young men get to college.
Mhm.
Okay. So create in me what that's needed. And it's just like, okay. Like, all this little nonsense, all these little mundane things you have going on over here, this is no longer, because I need to
Mhm.
take you somewhere higher, which means a new mindset, which means a new heart, which means maybe a new circle of
Mhm.
influence, which means maybe a new occupation, maybe all these new things, which is growth, which means what? Which means pain.
Which means you're gonna be uncomfortable and it's about to cost you a lot. And I don't
Mm.
mean money. It costs, the old circle of family, friends. Like sometimes we got to shed everything. Like God will strip us of everything: our houses, our cars, our finances, everything that we are familiar with. Sometimes God will strip us, and I'm, in my season of stripping. And when I say God has stripped me of everything, but you don't realize how much baggage that you carried or how much of this, that, and the other that you carried until you are no longer carrying it. And you look back and you're like, it was really painful, but I'm so grateful for it. I'm so grateful for it. Oftentimes I'm crying out to God just in gratitude of how much he really cares and how loyal he is to being exactly who he said he would, which is the great I am. And I'm like, I'm just in awe. You take so much time and you invest it into me when it's so much, else to do, but he cares for each one of us like we're the only person on this earth. Only person. And for that I'm grateful.
That is true, and is gratitude is a word that needs to become so mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's there is a strong sense of just a lack of gratitude because entitlement is connected to the fact that you're not grateful because you feel like you deserve something. And like one of the
Mm-hmm.
obviously once you come into the Christian faith, the one thing we always say is, God, I don't deserve this. Like me,
Mm-hmm.
like, but when you're entitled, you think that stuff is supposed to be given to you, and it's couldn't be
Mm-hmm.
further from the truth. You know, like you want to talk about gratitude list. I mean, we could just sit here and just shoot back and forth all the things we're grateful for just while we're sitting
Mm-hmm.
right here, and we probably could be talking till 2 to 3 hours
Yep.
almost nonstop of what we are grateful for, right? I mean, the fact that we're able to be in this place, and this is the only time that exists to be thankful that God put us in the same room at this time. Like, that's something to be grateful for. Like, I didn't know your story an hour ago. The fact that you lost your mom after you got your freedom back, it's just like, my goodness, that's the fact that you're still alive and didn't have a heart attack or a mental breakdown from that, and you're able to still be here, is something that where when I walk amongst the people, and I'm just like, you know what? I know somebody who had a testimony who was in your same shoes, and let me tell you what she did. That's what we're called to do, and that's when we get it.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Um, so how long would you say? Okay, so after your father passed, what was the turnaround time? Like where you started to push or like you say, lean into God. Um, and how long did you stay angry for? I know you said that God spoke into your spirit walking out of the hospital. But what did the timeline after that look like?
Well, 6 months later, I'd gotten married, and obviously that's good times or whatever. And it lasted less than 5 years, and let's just say there was some turmoil there. Probably some healing that I didn't resolve from that. I always try to say, like, even if you get into a situation where you feel like maybe you got the short end of it, take some personal inventory and be like, okay, what role did I play in this? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Someone may have overreacted, but I still was present. Right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I do take responsibility to the fact that my first marriage didn't work out at all. And that peeled off a lot more scabs. That peeled off almost as many scabs as losing my father. Because at that time, I was what should have been known as living the American dream. House, nice ride, solid savings, all of these different things, working to get out of debt. I mean, it was good times. And then, of course, that didn't work out. And then that situation broke me in a different way that I did. My father's death didn't break me because when I walked away from my father, like I turned things over to God and was just like, he's going home to be with you. Let me know how many more songs he's writing up there with you because I know he's doing that. And so
Mhm.
I knew my father was in a better place. When I went through a divorce and was displaced from my house, I didn't know what to do. Like this was new territory. You know, I don't know how to deal with the anger, depression, anxiety, lack of finances, displaced from the house, wondering who you can trust. Can I afford what's needed to get out of this? And where's my church life at? There wasn't much of one, which is interesting. So like I'm going through one of the toughest times and I had my family, but I didn't have a community. And that's not good to be in that place. Where there's nothing there. I had no men to pour into me. I had no men to pray for me. I had no church community. I went back to the place and kind of got restored there, but that was after I'd already just almost demolished myself. Almost just took myself out mentally. I was checked out. I was so in a bad spot. And so that would probably be the turning point. Um, of when I needed to get back in the game. So the pain from my father's death had subsided, but the divorce just dug a whole new hole, whole new bullet wounds and everything that I had to deal with. And it took me a year and a half to to remedy that situation, along with losing 65% of my income and burying myself in probably 10 more years of debt to deal with that situation. And of course, now I can look back and say I'm cleared of all that. It didn't take me 10 years to resolve that because once I had rededicated my life, I was just like, Father, you know what I need, and it's interesting. The father I needed during that time was no longer here, and so I didn't have that father to be able to look across from me and say, what am I doing here? Because I was lost, and none of my people had went through a divorce as you know turmoil, like very very you know aggressive. No one had ever been through one that was like that much of a struggle, and so I didn't have any points of reference. No one had been through that, and so I was learning it along the way and failing along the way too. So that's where we ended up as far as that's concerned. I think that the father's death wasn't the breaking point. It was the divorce that almost killed me, literally, mentally and physically.
Right. Sometimes stuff like that can be really hard to come out of because when we go in, we think it's for life or, for the rest of our lives. And so we build on that. And oftentimes when we're going through that stuff, it's like, it seems to be never ending. But I thank God, that you are where you are now, and that, your mental health is better. And it just seems like you're doing a whole lot better. Um, so what was your first project, or how would you say, well, let me back up. How would you say you started, um, like the ministry, your books, stuff like that? What was the unction, that made you want to step out and get to, pursuing different things? Do you feel like God was nudging you, or was it just like a desire?
Well, the books and the ministry are two different times. The books would have been right before, right around the time my father died. Because my first book, Awakening All Within, was written in 2011, which would have been the same year my father died. The speaking happened not long after that. The ministry came. I think the ministry came definitely came post my father. It The ministry happened from an interesting standpoint. Like I said, the speaking came on the back half of Awaken the Baller Within, leading into I'm More Than Enough, and of course now with the newest books. The I had always been a sports writer, working with teens along the way and helping them get scholarship money and to be able to go to college and things of that nature. So that was always there. Then it started kind of growing into mental performance coaching, where I was working with athletes, taking the Awaken the Baller Within principles and working that into real life. Like, hey, what the mental strength you use on the football field, you can use in the office, and you can show it. You can show it in your profession. So that came from that. But then it was very mind heavy, very you know, maybe a lot of NLP, just a lot of mental, of course, a lot of Think and Grow Rich in there, things of that nature. And it wasn't that the spirituality wasn't in there; it wasn't the primary source. Um, even some of the guided meditations I used to do with my guys, it wasn't religious at all. It was just strictly clear your mind, just you know, not so much woosah, but very close to that. Just going through that process. But I remember speaking at a Wednesday service, and I did a talk there, and the assistant youth and family minister director was in the audience, and she said, I think you'd be good to speak to our teenagers." She's like, "Would you put together a 3-part series and teach them, you know, whatever you want to teach them? But I think that you would connect with them well." And interestingly enough, I put together a 3-part series titled "I Am More Than Enough," which ended up being a book.
Mm,
uh,
wow.
but what was interesting is that they put the group together, and it's probably like 25, 27 teens in there. The next week, we had like 35. The week after that, they're bringing in more tables because we came over 40. And
Wow.
I'm I'm literally just someone hired to come teach a class, and there were parents coming up to me. I was part of the church, but I wasn't really that active. I'm kind of like the dude who comes in church and sits in the back. So I'm just there. I didn't really utilize community. I didn't really even know hardly anyone there. I
Yeah.
just went to the church, but I didn't connect with anything. I didn't do anything before, after. I just came and left, went and had my lunch and went home. But I did that series, and there were people coming up to me saying, "Thank you so much for teaching our teenagers. My kid actually wants to come to church now." And I'm like, "What is this?
Wow.
Like, I don't even. What are we doing?" Um, and so the woman asked, she's like, "You think you might want to stick around and be a volunteer?" And I'm like, "Okay, I'll try this out, whatever." And next thing you know, a gentleman came along and he saw something in me. He's like, "You have a heart for giving." He's like, "Now let me just teach you how to do ministry." And for 3 years, we built a ministry that probably had 12, 15 students to a solid 25 just on the high school end of it. Just on the high
Wow.
school end of it. And so, we're doing the rallies, we're doing the retreats, we're doing the camp outs, we're doing all of these things, the road trips. It was crazy. And so I was, we built that ministry and it was going well. Then COVID happened. And so I had learned the ministry, but I realized that I was no longer, my season there was over. It was
Hmm.
tough. I still keep in touch with some of those parents, and those teens know for the rest of their life they can reach out to me. Most of them are in
Hmm.
college now. So, but I'm their guy for life. I'm always going to be that. And so the ministry was born from that. And now so I've taken on the calling of leaning into future generations. My calling is to make sure that I pour out to enough youngsters, because the generations behind us are going to be part of the revival, which is going to turn the tides in this country, and it's going to be
Hmm.
just wait for it. Get all the popcorn that you can ready,
Yep.
because this generation behind us is some mighty young men and women
Hmm.
who are just going to just be like, enough, like
Yep.
no more of this, no more doing
Yep.
these types of things in all these different sectors. They're going to take back over the pillars of society and go and just rock it out. It's going to be, it'll
Hmm.
get dirty. We're going to be some trench warfare going on, but
Yep.
know that God is working through them. So now my calling is to pour into them, to go fight the
Mhm.
battle and to stand in the
Yep.
place when those arrows are coming against them and say, no, no,
Yep.
shoot me, not them, and
Mhm.
let them go
Yep.
to battle. And so that's sort of the transformation, because obviously now teen ministry, youth ministry, and really just pouring into young adults is where I am now. Um, I still speak at corporations. I still speak in, nonprofits. I'm still speaking in churches and things of that nature. But the service that wakes me up in the morning is serving them. That's what
Mhm.
drives me. Other things fund the situation, but
Mhm.
that is, let's just say this. I teach 40% of the week right now. I see
Okay.
in different sectors, nonprofits, churches, schools, different things of that nature, um, corporations, small businesses, or whatever. 20 to 30, 40% of my time goes into youth and teen ministry because it's bigger than me. This game is bigger. This game is bigger than anything I could ever imagine. And so that's where a lot of my focus goes to. It's like I go take care of the mortgage in the day and I go serve my teens in the evening. And sometimes I even serve
Mhm.
them during the day because I meet with them and sit down and coach them many times. So we're here for that purpose.
That's amazing. And you know what I've noticed? Like when we operate in whatever it is that God is calling us to, it brings us so much fulfillment. Like the funding, if God is calling you to it, of course He's going to see you through it. But I've noticed that like when you're operating in your gift and in what it is that God is calling you to do, it's so fulfilling. It's a lifestyle. It's amazing. Like it just makes your heart full. Like your heart is so full after, doing what it is. And then not even to mention like along the way, God sends you so many different confirmations to let you know that you are on the right path. And not to say that the path is easy, but just the encouragement of him like taking time out and letting you know you're on the right path and I got you, you know? And I think that's amazing because like you said, the next generation coming, they're powerful. They are powerful and you can definitely tell that God is going to do something amazing through them. And something major is, we're on the brink of something major with these kids. And so it's exciting. And like you said, we definitely have to pour into them and just have their backs. So I think it's amazing what you're doing. I really appreciate the work that you're doing. I love that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let me ask you something else. With the teens, do they kind of age out of the program, or you just kind of work with them as long as they want to work with you?
They can't age out because obviously it's from seventh grade. Where I'm at now is seventh grade through 12th grade. And so once they graduate, they obviously have graduated. Some come back and become ministry leaders to the same teens they used to pray with in the audience. Um, but they just grow out of that and just go into young adults if they choose to. So there's definitely multiple layers. They don't have to be disconnected. And yeah, once they have a I have a young man I'm working with right now. He was part of the teen ministry group. He graduated. He started college, and now I'm looking to hire him to work with one of my companies. Um, I'm big on entrepreneurship. I'm definitely good on young men earning. So I stand in that place. Why would I not? If there's someone who's within my circle whom I've mentored, why would I not patronize? Why would I not look to them first? You know,
Hmm.
even if it's not as the primary role, but be part of it so that they can see how the game of life works at a different level. They're just now coming into their own and trying to learn some things. And so it's like, why not bring them in on an apprenticeship, on an internship type of basis, and show them how you go out and you deal with, events, conflict resolution, and things of that nature. I want to be able to be that example to them as best I can and show them where I fail. Why
Hmm.
not? You know, like, hey, yeah, I really blew that one. Let me tell you what not to do here, because
Right.
all of that is part of it. I mean, like, you don't they don't just need to see your, when you're made up and got a fresh cut. No, they need to
Hmm.
see you when you're a little bit busted, when you've taken a couple blows to the jaw and you fought a bear and you came out of it alive, but you look a mess. They need to see all of that, especially for
Yeah.
the young men, especially for the young men,
Hmm.
because because we have to be creative. We're built through adversity,
Mm-hmm.
because
Yep.
the calling we have is to protect the world, protect our families, protect women and children, protect, our communities. Like, that's our job, to stand in
Mm-hmm.
that place. Like, we walk through the door first. If there's somebody there with a gun, we're supposed to take that bullet. That's what we are called to do. And so there's a certain level of strength that needs to come from that, and that strength has to come from our Father, and we
Mm-hmm.
have to be prepared and ready to take on those tasks as men.
Absolutely. I think that's awesome. So you said so what else do you do? I know you said you have a few different companies, but I'm asking just for the platform so that, people are aware of the different projects that you have. Um, and if people want to work with you, how can they find you?
So I am, obviously, an author, speaker, consultant, mental performance coach. I also create curriculum for many organizations to where they can utilize my material to teach to their people. I got a women's group out in West Texas teaching my material. I have a nonprofit teaching kids leadership, respect, and gratitude. And so I'm able to create curriculum for people, even some ministry notes as well. Also doing, and obviously, I'm also an author, so I speak on the many books and platforms. People can find out more about me at ahmardvital.com. That's AHMARDVITAL.com. Love to for them to reach out to me if you have a booking, or you have a group of young people, or you have a company. And companies, I speak mostly on motivation and awakening the baller within you, which basically is a leadership, very motivational locker room kind of let's get off the sidelines and get in the game type of message. So I'm definitely available for those. We're about to do one of those here pretty soon out here in Texas. And so that's how they can reach out to me. And obviously, if you have some young people in your life who are dealing with some things right now, um, on the website, there's a contact form at the bottom at ahmadvital.com, or you can email info@ahmadvital.com. If you put let the healing begin in the subject line, and let me know what's going on with your young people. Maybe they're in a season and they haven't gotten out of that season, then it's carrying over to another season. Maybe some anxiety, or just having a couple of bad days, and maybe have lost some purpose, maybe have lost a little bit of hope. Put this podcast in the subject line, and we'll do a 30-minute discovery call with your young adult, and see if we may be able to sift through some of what's going on, see if we can get them on a path to just get them started. So devote 30 minutes to that, so your audience can take advantage of that, and reach out to me in that regard. But aside from that, I'm Ahmad Vital on all the social media platforms. It's AHMARDVITAL. No alias, no secondary, nothing. You type in Ahmad Vital, it'll take you somewhere where you can find me and reach out to me. And I look forward to hearing from those, sharing your testimonies, and even if there's a prayer request, send it over to me. We'll get that taken care of. I've been getting some of those lately, which is letting me know that the world is yearning for a message of
Mm-hmm.
hope, of grace and mercy, and just get to a place where it's like they know that they're loved. And so,
Mm-hmm.
if that's you, just send it over to me. Tell me what the name, tell me what the situation is, and we'll get that on. We'll get you taken care of there.
And you know what? I appreciate that. It was something that God was witnessing to me a few weeks ago. He was showing me just the many people, that are hurting, like, and it's been times where he's let me feel people's hearts, and just the pain and the agony that they're going through, and people are so hungry, like, for a word from God, for something, just for some type of hope. And so I appreciate you, extending that invitation for people to come get prayers and stuff like I really appreciate that. And so thank you. Um, and thank everyone for listening. I appreciate your time. We enjoyed today's session on Let the Healing Begin podcast with me, your host, and Ahmad. Also, you can head over to our faith-based T-shirt and hoodie store that supports second chances for the formerly incarcerated population at www.greatergrowthllc.com. Until next time.